Greetings, welcome to the latest edition of the Courtside podcast. My name is Andy Burns, and as of only a week ago, I passed over a significant landmark in my life that my son Elijah and my wife Kath like to remind me is that I'm now halfway to 90. So as I look to scurry around and find the paperwork to get my discount at the local beefeater and also see if I can get some subsidies on the local rail network, I'm going to leave you in the company of Gordon MacLelland of Working with Parents in Sport. This is a fantastic organisation that I've been wanting to introduce you to for quite some time. So sit back, enjoy this time together, and at the end of it, I'll tell you what discount you can get when you reach my significant age. Welcome to the Courtside Podcast. So, Gordon MacLelland, welcome to Courtside.
Yeah, thank you. Delighted to be here.
We've had quite an interesting journey making this podcast go live, I think. You've been wrestling with internet connections, and I've been having frustrating moments with drones flying over Gatwick. So we're currently recording with you, hopefully rectifying the Wi-Fi, and I'm recording at my mate's back bedroom. Grateful for the hospitality, but would rather be at home.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's the problem with living on a hill surrounded by sheep. It comes with the territory.
Are the sheep always on their phones?
Well, they could have been this morning.
They're just draining your bandwidth. So Gordon, so pleased that you're on podcast. I've been looking forward to getting you on for quite a while. I follow you on Twitter. I subscribe to kind of the blogs and stuff that you do. So can you give to our listeners just an introduction of who are you, where you're from, and what is it in the world of sport and parents that you're involved in?
Yeah, so I'm Gordon MacLelland, based in North Yorkshire, and we've got an organisation that ultimately tries to support coaches and parents in building positive relationships with each other, ultimately for the good of the children playing the game. So as a company, we work with lots of sports. We're starting to work with some national governing bodies and finding ways to disseminate this information and look to shift attitudes and cultures, both coach attitude, parent attitude, and in some instances, perhaps even organisational structure, because some of the organisational structures actually lend itself to some of the issues. And probably more so with tennis. So that's who we are, and we're growing all the time, and we'll see where it takes us.
Yeah. So what's the name of your organisation?
Yeah, so we're Working with Parents in Sport.
It's a bit Ron Seal, is it? It does exactly what it says on the tin.
Yeah, I suppose it is very Ron Seal. I'd forgotten that advert. You're rolling back the years now. I've seen that advert for years, but yeah, hopefully it does what it says on the tin.
Yeah, it's right. So you're in North Yorkshire. I hadn't clocked this. Whereabouts?
So near Bedale, about 20 minutes south of Scotch Corner.
Yeah.
45 minutes north of Harrogate, that sort of area.
Yeah, well, I'm a Teesside lad who grew up near Whitby. So
Oh, brilliant. Well, yeah, we've got season tickets at Middlesbrough.
Good man.
My son's got a contract at Middlesbrough. He's only 9, which I wrestle with every day.
Yeah, I bet.
And so he plays for them. But, good fun. Certainly feel part of the community up here anyway.
Are we going to hold on to the playoffs?
It's not looking good. I was there on Tuesday night when they lost in the cup and had a very devastated 9-year-old deal with for the first time, really, after years of watching them. But... yeah, I don't know. I think somebody's got to go shopping in January for that to happen, I think.
Do you have Steve's email address? Can you put some suggestions in for the chairman?
Yeah, I've got quite a few suggestions. Unfortunately, I don't, which is a shame.
You could put your son on. You never know. The unknown.
Well, yeah. I think we'll leave that.
So in part of in the work that you're doing, what are some of the issues or the topics that parents are constantly talking to you about or wrestling with about, in our context, being courtside or whether it's pitch side or whatever it would be?
Well, look, I think any parent goes through a huge range of emotions when they're watching the children. I think one of the best quotes I sort of heard on this when a parent was trying to explain it was that it feels like you're watching your heart run around outside of your body.
Yeah.
And I think if that's happening, I think it's going to lend itself to certain behaviours. I think some of the issues that parents face aren't all necessarily created by them either. I think a lot of it comes when they feel like they're sort of witnessing the unknown.
Yeah.
They haven't been provided with the information to help support them, so they're making their own judgments and their own decisions. And I think, I often talk about things like, the 10,000 hour myth and how our media portray sport. And a lot of parents merely mimic it. And indeed, a lot of coaches merely mimic it. And actually, a lot of what is portrayed is actually confusing and it's false. So these, parents who read about the 10,000 hour myth and think that, okay, well, let's get our 10,000 hours done as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And let's cram them in. And, if I do my 10,000 hours, that means I can pack up and go to Hollywood. And likewise, well, I'll get my 10,000 hours done, but I can't possibly dream of doing another sport because there's no way that can be right. Because to be really good at one, that means I have to devote all my time to it. Yet we know that the science tells us that later on, people who've done a range of sports have got more chance of being elite or successful in one, having had that background. Now, you explain that to a parent and try and talk to them about it, and they think you're absolutely barking mad.
Yeah.
I think it's really tough. I mean, I made the decision last summer that football season's finished for my son in May. That means we'll see you in August. And you go off and you play cricket, and you're playing tennis, and you're doing all those things. And I really regretted it at the beginning of August. I thought, oh goodness me, first year in a sort of Category 1 football club, and for the first 3 weeks of the season, was off the pace, and you sort of think, oh God, have I made a mistake here? And by the middle of September, he was back to where he was, and he's now thriving again. And you've got to have such trust in the science that it's right to have a break, and that if we don't have a break, these children are going to suffer burnout. They're going to become bored. They're going to become disinterested. But you're potentially paying the price there, and a lot of parents think, oh well, can't possibly have 3 months off. It's all going to go backwards, and you're permanently wrestling with these thought processes, and in many ways made worse. I don't know, when you're sat on a court, that is made worse by parental peer pressure almost, that you make a decision that you think is right and you carry out that, and then somebody next to you will come along one day and say, oh well, I'm doing this with my son, and did you know that they've got their grade 8 on the pit, and that's because they've been having these 3 specialist sessions at such and such. And you go from having this sort of being really happy with the sort of equilibrium that you've got to thinking, oh my goodness, am I making a complete mess of this? And that causes stress that then leads to some of these behaviours that we see. So, there's so much out there that we've got to do to inform, but not preach. This isn't about telling parents how to parent, and this isn't, certainly from our end, isn't telling people what to do, because actually, do you know what? There's no such thing as a perfect sports parent, because even though I live and breathe this, every minute of the day, I still make some shocking mistakes, and I'm the first to hold my hand up and say, do you know what? I know this. I know I shouldn't have done that, but actually, what's in play here? A whole heap of emotions, and sports parenting's far more complicated than we make it, and putting people into boxes saying, well, you're pushy or you're supportive or you shouldn't do this. Sorry, it's not as straightforward. It's not as straightforward as that by any stretch. And I think maybe over the years that any of these campaigns that have gone on, or anything to engage parents, have just taken totally the wrong tone. They've been very much, you mustn't do this, you mustn't, do that. And I still tell the story frequently when we're out and about doing talks, that when we interviewed 1,000 people on Teesside for our Great Sports Parenting book, and we asked some questions, and one of them was, what do you think is the best way of supporting your child? And over 80% said, does that mean we stand behind that line and don't shout at a referee? And that shows how much work there is to do.
And it's just far too binary. It's just so nuanced. I mean, I love that quote about watching your heart running around on the pitch. And I was chatting to a friend the other day and said, "Oh, why do you do the podcast?" Because I'm just fascinated in exploring why. As a personality, I'm fairly laid back. And you drive in the car to watch him go play a game, and I'm going to enjoy this. I like watching live sport, and halfway through a match, I'm starting to project and experience emotions about the sport. Like, well, where is this coming from? I didn't generate this. I didn't force myself to get into I wouldn't say wound up, it's not quite my personality, but I am feeling kind of anxious. The game isn't going how we wanted to. He very often is far calmer than I am, and I start getting conscious that there are emotions getting stirred up. Well, where's that emotion coming from? Well, in part, that's my little boy there who, I adore and I love, and I want things always to go well for him, but welcome to sport, it doesn't. And so part of it is me learning to manage and wrestle with a natural parental desire to care and protect, but knowing that he's in a context where you can't. He's got to fall off his bike to learn to cycle. He wants to be there. He's enjoying the wrestle maybe more than you are, because you've spent the first however many years as dad picking them up every time they've fallen over. Yeah, and so you feel very exposed and vulnerable in that, going, is anybody else experiencing this, or am I now the only pushy parent here, as you get badly labelled?
Yeah, and I think we are a generation, and we've become a generation of parents who like to micro.
Yeah.
Certainly a generation of parents who try to smooth the path for our children.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the big parts of growing up is, being exposed to those environments, picking yourself up, developing some resilience, but in a controlled way and in a controlled environment. And that's one of the big parts of our talks to parents is creating, that environment where things like failure are okay.
Yeah, agreed.
It's very difficult to do. It goes very much against the human norm, but actually, if you take a step back and think about it, you then start to look at what the parental role in sport actually is. It's a very different role than what we think it is.
Yeah. And I look back on my own either career in work or other aspects of my life, and you start to notice various spikes of personal growth and development, and actually most of those were negative context in my life where I didn't appreciate going through it, but now with hindsight I appreciate the learning that I got from it. And and there's something about sport that is probably maybe one of the first times for us as parents we place our kids, not trying to phrase it correctly, in harm's way. You will potentially now lose today. You could potentially get hurt today, and I'm used to kind of protecting you from that. And now I'm introducing you to a sport that you want to play, and now I really can't do anything about this. And that's a new experience for us. And I don't think there is the conversation for parents out there to say, who's experiencing this for the first time? Yeah. And how do we help you know how to navigate it? Because you can't run on the pitch now and save little Johnny from the reality of a 7-0 thumping. No, and I know he's crying after it, but tomorrow he'll probably be in a better place than you are about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And children recover far quicker, than we do as adults. But I think what you've touched on there is where there's got to be far more done by organisations and coaches.
Yeah.
To help explain what's going to happen and why it's going to happen and what it may look like and provide some reassurance with their communication, so that you at least start from a position of at least knowing something. In a lot of cases, people go in and know absolutely nothing and aren't given any reassurance whatsoever. No. And what you've said there is that, when we hand over our children as parents to coaches, we are placing our complete faith and trust into those individuals. And we like to know what's going on. Yeah. You wouldn't just throw them into the unknown, into something you hadn't seen. We wouldn't throw them into a river and not knowing that they're able to swim. Yeah. So, but yet we do that in sporting contests. I think it's really important that we build those connections. I think that coach-parent relationship over the years has become muddled. I think as a result of that, maybe behaviour on the parent side, it's led to coaches now putting up a complete closed door. Yeah. Say, I can't cope with this. I don't want to cope with this. This isn't what I signed up for. But you see, that's wrong. We're pushing in coach education that how you build positive relationships and how you communicate with parents should be part of level 1 coaching awards. It should be part of CPDs, because it's absolutely vital. And coaches have also got to recognise in this that parents are still the biggest influence.
Yeah.
And parents will still, you can do all you want on your 2 sessions a week, but if that's not being backed up at home, it'll be like taking 2 steps forward and 2 steps back.
Yeah.
And actually working together, without a doubt, produces the most positive outcome.
Is there a difference between sports and relationships with their coaches, I wonder? Because for us with tennis, there's one coach and our son. There's one coach and, say, three kids in a session that maybe our son's in. So that's quite an intimate relationship, and we get to know that coach. Whereas if you're looking at, say, rugby or football, there's maybe 1 or 2 coaches and there's a whole swathe of maybe even multiple teams there. So actually my ability as dad to have a chat with a coach is limited, because there's 101 other parents wanting to have a chat with the coach as well. So I might be even more out the loop. I'm very conscious with the context that our kid plays in, that I have quite a good relationship with our coaches, but also I'm not competing for their time with a multiple other amount of parents. So it builds and fosters a good relationship because I can genuinely get to know them. Whereas I wonder whether for other sports it gets more tricky, because there's a lot more parents wanting time of a limited amount of coaches, because it's a team environment.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's always going to be the case, isn't it? It's like being sat in a classroom with 30 children.
Exactly.
You're vying for the attention of the teacher, and I think it is different. I mean, the one thing that strikes me there, and you've taken it as a sort of for granted, and it certainly isn't the case when we're talking, is that your coach at least clearly talks to you.
Yes.
So at least there's 3 of you that are having a conversation, and he's open enough to have a conversation. I think coaches in bigger sports, that's where how they communicate is important, and that the times, the avenues that they make themselves available for chat is also important.
Yeah.
I think parents need to respect that, because we've got an awful lot of volunteers out coaching people who aren't paid.
Yeah.
And coaches shouldn't be available at 8 o'clock on a Sunday evening to deal with a parental concern when they're at home with their family. And so again, that still comes back to, at the very beginning of the process, having very clear structures in place about when, how, why is a good time to communicate. But I think you're right. I think obviously the more there is, the more it's going to be difficult. But I suppose you can be creative, because you do get assistant coaches sometimes, but some clubs or some people might be creative enough to have a sort of parent liaison person. In the States, they have technical directors who some of them actually just go around and try and communicate what's going on and pick up the pieces for the coaches. So the coaches do the coaching and they pick up that side. So, I mean, there are ways around it, but I think, of course, if the more children there are and the more they're involved with, the more difficult it's going to be.
But you get. No, go on. Sorry.
I was going to say, last week we've been at Middlesbrough now since the beginning of this season under contract. We've obviously been there prior to that, and we had 15 minutes in December last week just to talk about the first 4 months and moving forward. The communication's been good. It's not always personal, because they can't get round everybody, but. They went off to Germany for a weekend without parents, and they kept us informed via WhatsApp. There was an awful lot of fearful parents there dropping their 9-year-olds, to go abroad for the first time without parents. And I do have to say the coaches and how they did, they took pictures of them on the bus. They showed they were okay in the airport. They sent messages from the football grounds. You could follow the results on Facebook. They then showed you them having a laugh in the park. They showed you then them eating dinner. And do you know what potentially could have been a really difficult, weekend for parents sat at home worrying about what on earth was going on, was actually made really enjoyable in many ways. And look, I must tell you the story attached to that, because it just emphasises how children see the game very differently to us. And it goes back to your point when you were talking about how you felt on the side. So I got my son back from this weekend in Germany. Been absolutely brilliant. They'd played Hertha Berlin, they'd played Wolfsburg, they'd played Hanover, they'd played Duisburg, they'd played Freiburg. Absolutely brilliant. And I got him back on Monday. He got back in the car, said, "How was your weekend? Did you really enjoy it?" And he told me that the hotel was beautiful. Oh, well, that's brilliant. I'm glad you like the hotel. And then I said, "Oh, anything else?" He goes, "Yeah, the sausages were really good." You know what? That's great, because you are in Germany. I'm chuffed to bits that we're getting the cultural side, in out of the way. Anything else you want to tell me? And he said, "Oh, yeah, my mate's mum's a hairdresser. She's got really good hair gel, far better than the hair gel." So I'm sat here having this chat, and I'm thinking, I really would like to know about the football.
Yeah.
And I followed it all weekend, the results on Facebook. I really like to know. Have you got anything to say about the football? How was it? Oh, well, it was all right. Okay. Well, anything more? Oh, I captained all day on Saturday. All right. Oh, brilliant. Oh, well done. That's great, isn't it? You captained your hometown club. That's just brilliant. I'm really, really proud of you for doing that. That's excellent. Oh, yeah, and I scored a free kick in the last minute against Hanover to top the group on the Saturday. And he said, "I never score." I said, "What did you do?" And he said, "Oh, well, I went off celebrating in the corner." I said, "Look, I don't like celebrating. Being from a rugby background." He goes, "Yeah, but it was the best feeling in the world." But my point with that was that it was so not on his agenda. Now, I know not every child's the same, and some would probably go back to the parent and tell them that because they think that's what their parent would want to hear. So in many ways, I was chuffed to bits that obviously he felt, comfortable enough to talk about what was important to him. So he'd obviously done something right. But it really wasn't high up on.
No.
So actually that last minute goal against Hanover, captain in your hometown, was beaten by the hotel sausages and hair gel.
Because it's their sport and it's their world, and as parents we project so much about what we imagine it must be like for them, instead of actually maybe spinning it around and saying, actually, what is it like for you? And our boy, like your boy does, he plays a lot of his sport, and it almost becomes quite a normal aspect of his life. Whereas I have conversations, because I'm out of town a fair bit, with people in the office going, "Wow, your boy plays tennis in Barcelona," and they're projecting all of this. That's exceptional. That's amazing, because it's not part of their norm. And then you get to this other point where it's not part of my norm. So what his life is quite exceptional in that sense. But for him, it is totally normal. And you get feedback, say, from others saying he's had a good week at training. He's done this. He won this match. He won't tell me. No. He'll talk about his mates doing this, or did you see that? Or I've got some new football cards and I got Messi on it as well. And you're like, right, I've been away for a few days. I'm really excited that you've learned. I want to know about it because I want to enter your world. And also you're of a certain age where conversations, Dad's a little bit embarrassing. So I'm trying to find the bits to chat about. And the last thing you want to talk about is the first thing I want to talk about.
Yeah.
And I wonder sometimes as I start to force my agenda, which it is, to have a conversation, I start to rob him of the joy of it, or I add pressure on. Is this the only thing Dad's interested in about me?
Yeah. And that brings on to what I think we want to talk about a bit around some of these life skills, because the environment we create at home is all based around what we celebrate.
Yes.
So if all we celebrate... So, for example, let's take these two most common questions asked by sporting parents. Everyone will laugh and say, "Yeah, no, I've done that as well." We haven't watched our child play at the weekend.
Yeah.
We get home or we get the phone call because our partner's there watching them. First question we ask, are they winning? Did they win?
Yeah.
Second question we ask is, did they score?
Yeah.
Right. Now, if that is the basis of our conversation, and the answer to both of those questions when they get in and we ask them is no, that's the end of chat for the whole sporting experience, and probably was the chat to what we had growing up. But what it inadvertently does is it also shows us that is what we value.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're not bringing in all the other skills by celebrating and asking about them and saying, well done for maybe packing your own bag. Yep. We're not celebrating any of those. So we're giving almost this false message. And I think as parents, if we took a step back and actually looked at what sport can offer, or the vehicle that it offers to learn these life skills, all we've actually got wrong is that we haven't celebrated enough the bits that we can control as sporting parents.
Yeah.
Because we can't control whether a coach likes our child.
No.
We can't control whether our child's going to get injured. We can't control whether they're going to develop relationships with girls in the teenage years and fall out of love with the sport that they've been playing. We can't control necessarily how they go through puberty and how they physically develop. So why don't we actually focus on what we can control and what we can celebrate, so that regardless of whether we're playing sport, our children go out into the world in whatever field that may be, knowing that actually, do you know what, it's really good that I'm committed to something, and it's really good that I'm self-organised, it's really good that I'm creative, and we will see the benefit of that, and that's what we can control.
Yeah, and one interesting thing that just happened this past term, and he did it intentionally for a week, and because of his age, he's done it intermittently. But probably the highlight for me this year in his sport is he decided to take a notebook with him, because he was saying, I want to learn how to get better at something. So off his own bat, he was asking the coach, can you honestly give me feedback on this? And he was writing notes down. This boy doesn't like to write, so this was kind of like fall off your chair moment. And he intentionally wanted to log and track for himself because he wanted to improve his serve. And now that, for me, would be something I would be suggesting. Why don't you take a book and ask your coach, Jordan, about this? He, off his own bat, did it. And it's one of the bits for this term I'm the most proudest of him, because he's now taking more ownership. And for him and his kind of confidence levels, that's pretty brave for him to ask his coach to be honest back to him. So I'm celebrating him being brave. And it instantly changes the conversation from we only talk about whether it was a close match, did you win or not, to actually the person you're now becoming through the sport. And it's funny, having chatted with you, just on that bit there, that is literally the highlight of this term, and it's simply a notebook and him asking a question. But what that says about him is far more. And that's something that the sport's encouraged him to become. That's a real positive for me over the past few months.
Yeah, and an absolute highlight, isn't it? But we get so caught up in the environment of sport and how professional game, viewed, and how it's all about winning and losing and being the best and whatever else. And actually, we've just lost sight. If we actually sat like we are today, nowhere near courtside, other side of a football pitch or whatever else, and you actually just sit back and think about what's important, you can actually start to realise.
Yeah. And it again comes to those bits that you celebrate. So we made a conscious decision, because when we moved house, you kind of have to do a little bit of redecorating and putting various pictures up. What pictures are we going to put up as that we celebrate for our communal family life together? And there's one picture of him with a racket in his hand,
right,
and nothing else, because he does have other things. We do other things together, and kind of it's little bits. What do I put down as a screensaver on my phone? Is it only him with a racket holding a trophy or something, or are there other bits when we just be so that when you turn your phone on or your laptop and he sees a screensaver, Dad likes me for these bits as well. And there's those bits of I love that phrase that you just said there. Kind of it's what you celebrate is what matters, and so it's trying again to reaffirm what matters to me about you, mate, is more than just your ability on a court.
Yeah, and yeah, you're right. And it's difficult, isn't it? You know, the amount of times that social media is used and people put their child there to be shot at. And, you know, look, we say that there's nothing wrong with recording those moments on social media, because actually in 10 years' time, it's good to have the memories. I mean, it's a good place on Facebook to see the photos. But, you know, let everybody else join up the dots. You know, put the picture up and say, great day with X, enjoyed our football today. Don't put, well, they scored 5 or they've been given this or that or they've won this and that, because, you know, human nature and everything is that, you know, we're just setting, as you say, children up for a fall there because we put them up there, and actually there is going to be a fall at some point. And the more that we've done this, the more, as you say, that, you know, you shouldn't be turning your house into a shrine.
No.
You know, with a young sportsman, you really shouldn't. You know, our son's got a little trophy cabinet in his bedroom, which is, and he's really proud of it because he's seen them at the football clubs and whatever else, and he likes. Probably got more than
the borough has anyhow.
That was when we went to Liverpool.
Okay.
And you know, he's got that, and as you say, maybe one picture of him doing his football, but it's kept in his room because they're his memories, and it's not for everybody else. And we've got to keep these things in perspective as families, particularly when there's maybe another family member as well.
Yep. No, without a doubt. I was just mulling over kind of when we, particularly on the social media, we put the posts out. You get that whole sudden double back. I've just posted it, and you sort of think, well, for whose benefit was I posting that?
Yeah.
Was this me on behalf of him saying to the world, Elijah just wants you to know he won today? No, it wasn't. That was me going, look what I made, and it's a winner.
Yeah. Well, I think it is, because you're like, who benefits? And you're not encouraging people to, say wipe off the social media, but actually, again, if you take a step back from that, there are some people that you want to know about it. So you're very close friends that you can show off.
Yeah. Ooh.
Well, if that's the case, why not set up a WhatsApp group?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? And keep it closed, because those people won't mind seeing that.
Yeah.
Facebook's just really open, isn't it?
Yeah.
As is Twitter.
Yeah, it's too open, and we're conscious with this podcast as well about how much we talk about it, because it's his life, and I'm trying to talk about what we're like on courtside. And yes, we have to draw in analogies of him, because this is why we do this podcast. Yeah. But we're very equally conscious that whenever we talk about him, why did I need to reference him in that? Well, I need to reference him because I'm talking about me being a courtside parent, but I don't need to be talking constantly about literally him, because that's his life and his story he needs to tell one day. It's unfair. Would love to have a quick chat, because you've done other blog pieces, and I would just want to fully recommend the listeners to jump onto your website, and we'll put the details at the bottom on the website for us as well, so you can link in. But you talked a lot about particularly the benefits that sport brings more holistically to young people, and what do you see as being some of the real top areas that sport that we can celebrate, that sport brings to our kids, apart from, as we've been talking, simply the trophies or scoring the free kick in the last minute?
Yeah, so I mean, look, there's a large number of them. I think there's about 10 of them that we think actually underpin performance as well. And this is the funny thing, going back to that statement of there's no such thing as an elite 9-year-old or a professional 10-year-old or a high-performing 11-year-old, is that if your aspirations, and some parents will dream as well for their child, whether that's right or wrong, even if it's a child's dream, there's certain things that will underpin high performance. And these are the life skills that we talk about, and these are some of the things that you can maybe control. So things like commitment, and then what can we do as parents to sort of foster that environment at home? Well, things like projects that you do at home, can you make it a long project with multiple stages? There's so much instant gratification now in the world, that can we do something that requires an outcome?
Yeah.
Do we as parents get that right balance when maybe you get those days your children feel, well, I maybe don't feel like training today. Well, hang on, you're going because that's what you're committed to, and it's done it. So we shouldn't let them drop out of things frivolously, or be too frivolous with commitment. If that's what we've signed up to and that's what we're doing it, because even as adults, there's days that we don't want to work. Yeah. And there's days that we're not as enthusiastic as we are about other things. So setting those sort of, examples sort of helps, and understanding what motivates them is another one, for commitment, because if you understand what motivates them, you can also help when that motivation's waning slightly. Yep. And so, do you remember when you said you wanted to do this, or you wanted to achieve that, or you wanted to do that? Well, if you know what that is, you can maybe change your conversation to help just not touch a nerve, but just help steer them in the right direction. And, and I think then again, once we've achieved something through commitment, it should be celebrated, and we should be enforcing, do you know what? You've got that because you have worked really hard over a long period of time. I am really proud of you for doing that. Yep. And that. So I mean, that's the commitment.
And again, it's noticing it. I'm going to be intentional as dad to say I'm going to call out every time I want to see that level of commitment. I'm going to celebrate that. I've noticed that, mate. The win didn't happen, or this didn't happen, but I am so proud of you for the commitment. It's commitment that makes dad happy. Oh,
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
And it's that kind of celebratory bit.
Yeah. And then we've got things like resilience.
Yeah.
So again, we can't, you touched on it earlier with the failure, we can't problem solve everything for them. We need to get them to understand that failure is okay and to find their own solution. And we can do this at home. It doesn't have to be about sport. Can we put them into some slightly new environments at times, experiences that are just slightly different to the norm, because that helps build experiences, and it helps build some of these sort of resilient skills that we talk about. And I guess, one that causes a problem, I think the Education Secretary or somebody high up in Parliament over here wrote something this week, and I think he was trying to say the right thing, but he just went about it all the wrong way.
I've got it here. Went completely the wrong way about it, but I do know what he's trying to say.
Yeah, and it was odd, and I picked up on that. He got a lot of criticism, but actually, some of the life skills he was talking about, agree. He just went about how you achieve them in completely the wrong way. Because yes, children do need to win and lose and learn how to win and lose, but that comes through the experience of doing it.
Yeah.
And how we then pick them up from those moments of failure to then go again.
Yeah.
Or how we deal with it. That's how you help build resilience.
Yeah.
That you sort of pick your child up, you piece them back together, you talk about the processes again, not the outcomes, and then you're just playing your sport again. And I think I hope that's what he was trying to say, because it doesn't have to be as brutal as he made it. And I'm sorry, you've seen that piece. It was a very outdated piece of thought process.
It was it's the Education Secretary Damien Hines. And he was speaking just this past week, and I won't go through all of it. I get it took me 2 reads of it, and I went, actually, I kind of know where you're trying to go. I just wouldn't have said it how you said it, and it felt like almost the usual narrative of snowflake generation. They've got no backbone, which riles me. And the need to learn to lose. Part of me went, I don't think you learn to lose. I think you lose. It's what you learn off the back of it. And it was much more a piece of around kids need to toughen up. So it felt like it could have been written in the 1930s, the way he'd said it, stiff upper lip, British type environment. Yeah. But I do agree with the sentiment that flows through it of the more times we put our kids in places where they need to try and step up, and whether they're able to that day or not, they do learn. Yeah,
absolutely. But those environments have got to be safe, haven't they?
Yes, absolutely.
And they've got to be managed by the adults in the process. So that's coaches and parents. So that's the resilience one. Self-organisation is another one, and thing for at home. Does your child, pack their own bag?
Yeah.
Do you help your child? Does your child at home do some of the jobs, to help you? Do they help you in the kitchen with meal preparation and cooking?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, if you've got younger children, they're not going to create you a Michelin-starred meal.
Yeah.
But can they make pasta or cook pasta?
Yeah.
We had an interesting chat, we were talking to some pathway parents, we were talking about some of the nutrition side, which we don't really touch on. We talk about the parenting side of it. And they're given all these amazing nutritional plans. The children go away at 16 or 18, they can't cook.
No.
So that's something we can control.
Exactly.
And that's something we can do at home, and celebrating whether your child packs the bag. Now, if you've got a young child, what we do is we make him pack it, but then we check it without him knowing.
Yeah.
So you're slowly building these skills so that when they do go out into the world, or they leave home and whatever, they actually think, right, goodness, I've got training tonight at 7:30. I've got to be there at 7. I need this, and this for it to work.
Yep.
And you're helping them rather than, do it all.
Absolutely, and Elijah's just learning that a little bit more this term, shall I say, more positive. So, tennis, just like every sport, you have your bag, and it is rammed full of everything you could eventually need. And if a training session is a couple of hours long, or he's going to be down there for a couple of hours, he instantly thinks it's hot now, I won't need anything later. So naturally, the bag isn't filled with anything for afterwards. And so he has regularly now turned up, much to his slight embarrassment, in having to play a session in his school shorts, literally his shorts he wears for class, and other bits and pieces. And it's amazing the next day he didn't forget his shorts. Whereas, and from a parental side, I need to be able just to either drop him off at the tennis, or if I've turned up afterwards to collect him, watch the last 10 minutes and just manage my own embarrassment. Yes, it's my child playing in his school shorts. Get over it. No one will remember this, but he will.
Yeah. And make a joke of it.
Exactly.
Make a joke of it with other parents, because, as I said earlier, there is no such thing as a perfect sports
Exactly.
parent. And actually, in many ways, what you've done now, where he's done it and made an absolutely monumental mess up of it, will have a far greater life lesson than somebody who packs it every time and does absolutely everything for them. I mean, the one that it's funny, isn't it? What riles you up, and then people say to me, "Oh God, you're an old dinosaur." But the one that gets me is when the adult gets moved out of the front of the car to be replaced by the superstar child. And I really struggle with that.
Yep, too right.
I really struggle with the fact that they are that good as a 9 to 12-year-old that we feel, oh, well done. You've just done an hour's game. You did really well. But actually, do you know what? You can go and sit in the back now, and you can have the prime seat. And you know what type of message does that send out? You know, my child tries to give me the bag, and it's like, no, I'm not the kit man.
Yeah.
You know, I've had my sporting career and carried your own bag. You're going to carry it, you know, and you're going to finish the job off properly.
Yeah.
You know, and it is, but it's little things. And if we do probably sit back and think about it, like we said earlier, you start to realise, oh, goodness me, yeah, what messages are we sending out as parents?
And then you start to get to the genuinely the elite end of sport, and you get WhatsApp message, Instagram images, or statements made by players. So you think, why do you feel that's a correct way to respond to it? Because nobody has ever held them to account. No one has ever said, hang on a minute, the sport put you on a pedestal, but can I remind you, you're still my boy. Yeah. And we watched... we went to watch a local tennis match that was going on. So it's a challenger. For those who don't know tennis, it's the next step down from kind of the main two, which everyone will be aware of. I mean, these players are phenomenal players to watch. And a guy was there, and he lost his match, and he literally annihilated 3 rackets in a row, smashed them. He was so furious. He was, all right. In part, someone needs to outwork their frustration. But all the way through the game, he was yelling at his dad, was being and Elijah went, oh, he's a bit stroppy. And I just leant over to Elijah and said, if I was that dad, you wouldn't be on that court anymore, mate.
Yeah, but if you were that, if you were that dad, you would have dealt with it along the way.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it was interesting. One of the reviews, one of the boxes that we got ticked in this assessment of my son's review at football there was a box about emotional self-control. Yeah. Of which he got a green at the age of 9, which is good, you know, which is amazing, because he literally plays the next ball, regardless of what's happening. There's no look over to me. There's no tears, whether it's all going wrong and they've conceded a load of goals in a short space of time. He literally stands there and plays the next part of the game. Now, I don't think I've taught that bizarrely. I may have done inadvertently. I can't tell you what the magic solution to that is. But I'll tell you something, if he'd behaved like you're talking about on that court, he would have been off that field at the age of 6, and he would have been off that field at the age of 7, and we would have been having a long chat about what's appropriate behaviour in a game of sport. Yeah. And I think you're right.
I know, and then on the younger level, where it may not be physically as extreme as what that guy does, I do lament sometimes with parents who lean across going, whew, what can you do? Oh, I don't know, what can you do, Dad? Well, whew. All options are not open to you as parent. And, and on previous podcasts, particularly in tennis, there's the tension around wrong line calls or cheating. You know, if you go to the extreme, where some of these younger players have to call their own lines in the sport, and that's really hard. I think the vast majority of the time, if it was wrong, they just got it wrong. They weren't cheating. But there are some times where you're like, And we've watched games where a child has called out when it was in, and because it was against our son, you're like, hang on a minute, and you look across to mum and dad and they go, whew, what can you do? They've got to self-manage. Well, I know we can't really interject in that sport, but if you're condoning that, they're learning mum and dad don't have a problem if I cheat. Whereas I would rather our son lost the match by being honest, and I'll celebrate that till the cows come home, than us both in the car going, "Whew, got away with that one, didn't we?"
Yeah, and look, tennis. I mean, we can't say where it is, but we may be going to the US to do some work with tennis.
Oh, great!
it's interesting talking about it because, but also this is where sometimes the organisational structure absolutely stuffs up parents and children.
Yeah.
Because if you're ranking 8-year-olds as they are in the States,
yeah.
well, this is going to come into it because basically what you've done is you've professionalised the sport.
Yeah.
You basically placed all the emphasis on the ranking. People then avoid playing each other because they don't want to affect the ranking. If they've got a big game, the natural reaction from mum and dad and the child is to cheat because otherwise you're going to drop down the ranking.
Exactly.
But I'll go back to it again. There is no such thing as an elite 8-year-old.
No.
There is nothing to suggest that those people who were number one at the age of 8, 9 and 10 are then number one at 16, 17 and 18. Yeah. So why have a structure then that fosters this type of behaviour? Yeah. And I'm not one of the happy, clappy, non-competition brigade, don't get me wrong. I'm massively competitive, was as a player, was as a coach, still massively competitive. Still want my children to be massively competitive, and winning is valued. It's just where we place the importance of winning that we've got wrong. But we can have tournaments where children win, we can have festivals where children win, we can do all these things, but I don't think there has to be quite that organisational structure that lends itself to that type of behaviour. I think it could do more.
Yeah, the last month's podcast with Naomi Cavaday, which it was interesting because she's now doing a piece of research. She said apart from Andy Murray, she knows of nobody who was number one at 11, 12, 13, 14, and the linear line kept on going. She said the majority of people in her experience, hence she's going to do this piece of research, is that if you were number one at 11, you invariably weren't number one at 16. And yet the pressure to be one now, thinking then that automatically you'll be one at 30, whereas this pressure is A, unfair on the child and robs them of the joy of playing their sport then and there. It commodifies it. It just turns it into outputs. That's all I'm after. But actually you're missing the true nature of the journey the sport will take them on will make them a better, more rounded person, as well as probably a better performer if we remove I need you to be number one right now.
I would have absolutely no issue if what I just said was a load of rubbish. If we put all the top 10-year-olds in a group in a chosen sport, we chucked all the money at them and we gave them all the facilities and all the best coaching, if then at 18 that same group were in exactly the same place as what we decided during the early selection, not that I'd agree with it, but you could sort of see why organisations may go that
absolutely.
That way. But nothing backs it up.
No.
In any sport, nothing backs it up. I mean, my gut feeling, and whether or not this isn't necessarily all based on science, but my gut of coaching for 15 years, and I've coached from under 7 all the way through to men's sport and seen all the different stages. I don't honestly think we can make the optimum until every child has gone through puberty.
Yeah.
Which sounds odd, but I think we can give them an amazing sporting experience, and I think we can equip them with loads of skills, and I think they'd be very, very good. But actually, until we have gone through that, and everybody has caught up to some extent, both physically and emotionally and maturity-wise, I think it just gives us a far better indication of what may come next. Because all these parents, I mean, you're looking at 10-year-olds, well, if they are twice the size and twice as quick, they're going to be better. If they can smash a serve down at 30 miles an hour quicker than everybody else, they're going to be better. But that doesn't mean that they're going to be better in 5 years' time.
No.
So there's two sides to that. The one is the parent who's then comparing themselves to the 10-year-old. The more physical child is. We shouldn't be comparing.
No.
We shouldn't be making early comparisons because there's so many different things that can change and evolve. And again, it goes back to what we can control. That there'll come a day if we've controlled on the hard work, the commitment, the determination, the resilience. There's a chance that some of these people who've had early success, again, not managed correctly, because I don't think we should criticise a child for being big at 10.
Nope.
No, it's not their fault. But I think then it's important that the parents of let's say that type of child actually continue to really focus on the process and be aware that people are going to catch them up, and be aware that actually it's going to become more skill and technique rather than power. That they're going to have to adapt those things. And if they have got that child, as long as they're focusing on that as well and not getting carried away with the winning because of the physical nature of it, that child's got as much chance as. The trouble is they get so lauded, don't they? And it becomes everybody's highlight of a weekend that later on, the moment they struggle, and I've seen loads in rugby and in football who have been good at 10 and at boys gone, because what used to be celebrated was their hat-trick every weekend. And everything at home and the car journey and everything was all about the hat-trick. Well, when the hat-tricks dry up, what have you actually left behind? You've left no intrinsic motivation about, this is my enjoyment, this is about me playing with my friends, this is about me improving my skills, this is about me competing, all those important things, and we've left them with nothing. And it's no surprise that they very quickly, when it becomes more of a challenge, then just drop and just drop out of the system.
Exactly, which is what in the last one, Naomi said she did wonder whether it's better to be in her words, the chasing pack, because you're always continually learning, and you've got this person to aim for, if you like. You've got that challenge to. Whereas I'm at the top, well, it's a different mentality. I've got things to lose. So it's fascinating. Just wanted to ask, because you do this all the time, what are some of your kind of golden nuggets, top tips for us as courtside, pitchside, poolside? I don't know, am I missing off any other sport there, side parents, of how you would advise? Not every parent is the same, naturally, but how any kind of principles, guiding principles that would say this is a really helpful way to be court or pitch side.
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask that, so I jotted sort of 5 down. I think.
Am I that obvious?
I think the first one that ultimately we've talked about, and this isn't one of the 5, is that a lot of our angst and a lot of our stress comes from us not being able to keep things in perspective. And I hope that the last hour has just got us to think about where children's sport actually fits and what they're trying to achieve by it. So number one, keep it in perspective. And then for me, there's a number of things you can do. You are ultimately the parent and not the coach. I know some of us have got sporting backgrounds and whatever else, but we've over ownership to the person that we're doing it to.
And now, to our child, we're parent. To the child, we are parent. We might be the former number 1 at that sport, but to the child, you're still dad, you're still mum.
And I think we've got to try and do our best to separate the two, and that comes again back to, I guess, and one thing we haven't talked about earlier, but one of the key character traits was being creative. And to be creative, we have to be able to play. So I think it's difficult for parents with a previous sporting background because we even turn the back garden into a coaching session. And actually, we shouldn't. We should be turning the back garden into what can we mess around with and what can we create. Not can I hit another 100 forehands? Well, can I hit it from 30 meters into a crossbar? Can I mess around? All those things. So, try and separate the two. I think the specialization one's key. Not to feel that the more you do with your child, let me word this correctly. Obviously, the more you do of something, the better you are going to be at it.
Naturally.
Or generally, as a rule, naturally. That does not mean you have to do your 10,000 hours by the age of 10. And that does not mean that you need to only focus on one sport in the hope that you will be really good at that sport. Please try as many as you can. You may find that they'll be better at, and generally, if you're good at one, you'll be good at something else as well. If you naturally do it, please give them that opportunity, because ultimately they will get to an age where it will be their decision. We haven't talked about that yet. Ultimately, they'll make a choice. So if they're not enjoying it and they're not motivated themselves, they'll drop out anyway. So please give them that opportunity.
Because I mean, in our sport, you look at Andy Murray. He was top draw with his tennis all the time, but he also had a chance, I think, to play for Hibs. When he was younger, and he made the choice to play tennis. There is, because the narrative seems to be you specialise young and you focus on it. That's all he ever did. He was, and probably still is, an exceptionally good footballer. and so it's not like it was only that sport.
No, and it's a difficult thing to get your head around that, but the science definitely is showing that as we said earlier, that's the case. Those early specialising players are often overtaken by their multi-sport peers, during their teenage years. Process, not outcomes. Yeah, and that's a lot of what we've talked about, isn't it? Celebrating the process, whether did we win, or what was the score. Really try and nail into what makes the experience. And actually, do you know what? It makes the whole experience more manageable and happier. I think you're happier as a parent, and I think your child's happier because you've got more than one success criteria.
Yes.
So even if you've had an absolutely shocking day, if you can dig out some positive from it. It was interesting actually. I was talking to a coach the other week, and I was slightly disheartened by. So I was watching my son play, and he plays in defence, and I was slightly disheartened by the amount of times he was 3v1 and 4v1 at the back. So of course your natural reaction is, well, where's everybody? What's everybody else doing? And I spoke to a close friend of mine who's also a football coach, and he was brilliant. And he said to me, you know what? He said, but just think how much he's learning defending 3v1.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was, and I probably would have not got to that in the end, but he just said it, and so it was right. Yeah, okay then. Yeah, well, we dealt with it and we backed off, and we tried to buy some time for other people to get back. We do all those things. Well, actually, do you know what? Let's turn what is in a negative in an outcome into, well, what did we take from today that was a good thing? And I think parents will enjoy what you celebrate, and that could be something you've done. The number of tackles you made, it could be the number of forehands you've kept in the court, it could be the number of volleys you made. The list could go, on and on. So that's another one. Challenge you to look for some processes, not the outcomes. Avoid the comparisons.
Yeah.
If we do compare, we run the risk of ruining the enjoyment because there'll always be somebody better. Yeah. And there'll always be somebody better at a younger age who may be bigger and quicker and stronger. Yeah. And actually remember, your child, even though they will compare themselves because it's one of their key parts of feedback, they won't be as stressed by it as you are. So they'll know that somebody's better, they'll know somebody's bigger, but they don't see it like we do. They'll still carry on playing and enjoying playing and whatever else. So that's another one. And then the last one, I suppose, is always a good one to finish on is, be wary of the car journey home. Yeah. Be wary of what you say, what you speak. You are mum and dad. Yeah. Try to ask them if you do need to speak about it, because some parents just can't help it. No. They just can't help it. You can say all your best to actually let the child lead the conversation, and that's great. If that happens and the child will say something to you later on, that's absolutely brilliant. If they don't want to talk, they don't want to talk, great. But the reality is lots just can't help themselves. No. So if you are going to speak, then try to ask them open-ended questions. Try to ask them questions that allow them to reflect on the experience. Yeah. And just because they've reflected on the experience, it's not for you to then impart your 30 years of wisdom, onto them. That's not the sort of green light for you then to get it all off your chest. The idea is that you're asking a question to allow them to reflect and engage and talk about some of the things we've talked about to try and make the whole thing as positive as you can. Yeah.
Yeah, we've started to have his own playlist on his tablet, so that gets plugged into the car as we drive home. So the first thing that comes on is his favourite track. So a win or a loss, he's got his music playing, and it stops. It instantly is, I want my music on, and then we can have a laugh at whether his music's any good or not. And it stops me because I can't help it because I'm engrossed in it. I enjoy it. It stops me the first thing going, hey, how was the match? Did you enjoy it? Going, right, music on. Let's listen to your sad stuff. And it's a habit I've tried to get myself into to stop the habit of how did you play today?
Yeah, but I also think it's good that you've said that, because one last thing that I think what people say is this is not how we operate is not about removing the fun.
No.
Children's sport is absolutely brilliant.
Yep.
Being a dad watching it, I live every single ball on the side. I'm not shouting it, but I'm living it. And do you know what? That is normal human emotion.
It is.
And I think what we've got to do is try and harness that normal human emotion into something that's far more productive.
Yeah.
Not like saying, no, you should shut up because this is what you do, because it shouldn't be about removing fun for parents. You know, they're doing all the travelling, they're putting in all the financial commitment. They're already great sports parents by the fact that they've got the child there in the first place. And we shouldn't be telling them, you need to behave, well, you need to behave in this way, but we've got to enhance that understanding to make it fun. Watching while still trying to adhere to some of these behaviours that we would like to see.
I agree, and on that, I think we will stop there because we've gone on bang to an hour. How's that for I must be getting good at this.
Fantastic. There you are. You're doing a great job.
There's process for you.
Yeah, brilliant.
I'll celebrate my short wins. God, mate, that was such a brilliant conversation. Thank you so much for being with us. And if any of our listeners want to get in touch with you, how's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you. So our website is www.parentsinsport.co.uk.
Yep.
You can find us on Facebook at WWPIS and on Twitter at WWPIS. But if you want to get in touch personally as well, you can contact me on gordon@wwpis.co.uk. And as I say, we look forward to seeing lots of people, and we love the interaction and the engagement, and we hope that people find some use in what we're creating.
Oh, they will indeed. Can I 100% encourage all listeners to go, first off, follow you on Twitter, because there's so much good stuff that comes through all the time on Twitter. You're an inspiration to us on Twitter, the amount you push out. And there's little infographics, there's links to fantastic blogs and thought pieces, and it just keeps the whole conversation alive, which is really, really helpful. So, Gordon, thank you so much, and all the best in 2019. Well, welcome, Courtsiders, to our Courtside post-match reflections with Kath and I just chewing over what we learnt off Gordon through this episode. How did you think it went, this one, now that I'm an older man?
Well, I don't know. I was thinking of you, actually, being 45 now. It's a shame we're not still located in the UK, because I'm sure there's Wrinkly Wednesdays still at B&Q, isn't there, or something? But so maybe you qualify for that. But anyway, that's an aside.
Might be a good discount. Is it harvesting? Get a discount for a certain age?
Yeah, or what's the one where you get the roast dinner?
Beef eater.
No.
I don't know.
Toby's. That, I reckon you could get that one.
Okay.
Anyway.
I'll put a request and we could record it there. And maybe Wrinkly Wednesdays, I might get a deduction there. I'm only 45. It's not quite over yet for me. All
right, sorry. Anyway, back to the conversation. Sorry, I forgot the question. Maybe I'm over 45.
You're the only one suffering with dementia here. What did you get out of the interview with Gordon?
I think there was the initial bit about when he talked about what message are we giving him, and he gave the illustration of his son packing the bag. That for me is the constant battle at home at the current time. My son's very good at packing the bag, not very good at unpacking. I think on Friday I unpacked 3 pairs of trainers, all different ones. Football boots are in there, I'm not sure why, in a tennis bag. 4 t-shirts, 1 pair of shorts, 6 socks, a hat, a coat, and 2 bottles. So
no wonder he carries his racket on the outside.
Yeah, and he couldn't fit his racket in, so I was shouting why he hadn't put his racket in his bag, but it clearly became apparent.
Well, there was the other week when he came off the court dehydrated, complaining that I hadn't put a bottle of water in. He just hadn't looked inside of his bag well enough.
Anyway, the packing bag, yes, we're a work in progress there, but definitely a good learning curve and a good level of responsibility for him to take.
I thought the reflection, because obviously being a Middlesbrough fan myself, and I got caught up in the story of his son playing for one of the junior academy sides and scoring the winning goal and captaining Middlesbrough. That would have been my dream growing up, but that was nowhere near that becoming a reality. And I can imagine it in picking his son up with the enthusiasm of kind of how did the weekend go over in Germany at the tournament, and it's literally his son saying the hotel was nice and the sausages were great. And it's that whole understanding about what is it that our kids get out of their sport beyond what we think is the priority or the importance bit. And I can imagine Gordon kind of desperately wanting to know how the entire weekend went, and all his son was either wistfully looking out the window, not saying anything, or just mentioning sausages. I thought it was hilarious, and it was a reframing of, for us as parents, not to project onto our kids what we expect that they would get out of the sport, but allow the sport to maybe bring something new to them beyond just the winning bit.
Yeah, and I think he talked, isn't it, around the whole that temptation to ask, isn't it? You're trying to find for, what did they win? Did they score? And thinking about what's the basis of our conversation that we have at home, and where do we put value and emphasis, and what other things are we choosing to celebrate as part of the skills. So I thought that was really interesting. Did make me laugh, just even in terms of the whole winning thing. I've totally got to get a grip on this. Playing paddle with Elijah yesterday, I did get beaten, very sadly. There was a few arguments over a few points, but leaving, he said, "Oh, Mummy, I totally smashed you." But I was quite quick to point out I did win 4 games out of the 12, and I wouldn't call that a smashing. So I said that wasn't a very kind thing to say.
We should change the theme tune to "She's Competitive Mum."
It should be, yeah.
Instead of courtside dad.
So I do, out of the partnership of the two of us, I do struggle the most to get beyond the winning, because I desperately want to win.
And I guess we live within that tension, don't we? Sport is about participating to win, as well as the constant refrain around journeying and development. And at some point, that is the end goal of a sports competition, of a sports match, of a game. It is to try and become victorious of it.
Yeah.
And yet there was just the Aussie Open's on at the moment, and I can't remember the name of one of the players who has just been beaten. And she said, "Today I haven't been beaten, but I've been educated." And I thought that was an interesting spin off, just reading very quickly on Twitter just now, of it's a good way to reframe a loss, as loss is actually a lesson. But yet still the aim and the goal is that those lessons minimise loss, I guess, and those losses turn into wins. So how do we as parents continue to affirm all the great stuff that sport does for our kids, and what's that balance of us continuing to nudge and help them progress in their sport? And maybe it's that nudging towards them wanting it and them deciding what winning looks like.
Yeah, and I think you used that very neat phrase, wasn't it, around it's where we place the importance of winning.
Yeah.
And that sense of keeping children's sport in perspective. I think it's a real tension.
It is a massive tension.
Difficult to do, because you kind of think, well, if he wants to do well, how much should I push, do this, do that, get involved, versus take your hands off, let them find their way. I find it very difficult to get that balance.
Yeah, because one of the last things I would hate for us is him to be in his mid-20s and at some point then say, "I wish you'd really push me in that. I needed a rocket," and we kind of reflect back on, "Oh man, we wanted you to find your own journey," and there's you internally maybe pushing against us, but knowing it was the thing that you wanted. And it's kind of that, well, welcome to parenting kids.
Yeah. I should have done an A-level in it.
I didn't get anywhere near doing just. But then it gets amplified, I guess, by the stuff that Gordon talked about, this parental peer pressure. As you bump into people, particularly for us in tennis on the court side, and you're overhearing the chat of, "Well, we've bought this racket," or "Is your son in this tournament?" "Oh, he's in that one." "Well, my son played in this tournament and has been seen by this." "Oh, and they've just got a sponsorship." "Has your child got a sponsorship?" And part of it is you don't know the person you're talking to, so they're trying to find some way in for a conversation. But very often, how much of it is them just telling you about their life, and how much of it is bragging, which then puts you on the defensive as a parent, saying, "Well, maybe I should get my child into that squad or into that team or into that stream." And then we start to project onto our kids the outworking of how that conversation's made us feel.
But then I guess that sort of links back a little bit to, wasn't it, the previous podcast, wasn't it, with Naomi as well? Are parents sometimes bragging, or are they just celebrating in terms of how things are going? And is that our slightly weird Britishness of not wanting to celebrate? And, I guess that awareness of some of the cultural, mix and things like that, that actually what we might perceive as one thing actually isn't intended in that way. That's just how we've received that information.
Fabulous apologetic Brits. Terribly sorry my child has beaten you. You'll try not to do it again.
So maybe we should do more of that. I guess it's the intent that you say something with.
Yeah. And the other bit for me that I got from Gordon was how he really humanised the whole interaction. Towards the end of the podcast, he's talking about, of course, it should be emotional. Of course, parents should enjoy it. Of course, we should be celebrating it. It's our heart, as he commented at the beginning, running around in front of us. There's got to be that emotional interaction, almost a permission to enjoy this instead of just sit over in the car and leave it to the professionals, and to be able to engage. But yeah, how those emotions do get played on by the fact I don't understand the context my child's playing in as much. Therefore, I feel either concern, wanting to protect, or I'm making a judgment that might be wrong just because I don't understand the sport that well. But how the emotions continue to get stirred up, and not to keep on beating myself up, because I am an emotional guy watching my boy play, and it is a special engagement and a special opportunity.
Yeah, no, so I thought it was really good, really loved it. And you could really sense that he's in it very much on their own sort of pathway at the moment, isn't it, with their son? So, and could hear some of the tensions and the learning and equally what they do through, or what he does through his work as well. So, no, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
So, Gordon, thank you so much. Please do connect with Working with Parents in Sport. If you just Google that, you literally come on their website. It's a brilliant site full of loads of resources and helpful tips. There's a couple of Gordon's books there that you can purchase to help you journey with your child in the sport that they love. So if you enjoyed this today's podcast, please do pass it on to fellow courtsiders, and let's keep this conversation going as we seek to support our kids in the sport that they truly do come alive on. All the best over the coming weeks, and I hope that you thoroughly enjoy the sport that you're watching. All the best.